In this video, I'm going to explain how my real estate development company, Humn Capital, works, what we do, how the business makes money, and what that looks like moving forward. So we are a real estate development company focused on the design and development, and that keyword there is design and creative, the design and development of boutique hospitality, largely boutique hotels, but recently restaurants as well, and probably more so in the future. We have 7 projects, 2 of which are open, 3 opening this year, and 2 that we are raising capital for currently. These are a mix of both principal development projects where we play the role of sponsor and general partner and have ownership, as well as fee development and design projects. What's different about Humn Capital is that we really manage the entire development process and the full scope of the creative process, which is, I would say, unique for developers. They say master of all, master of none. The only reason we're able to do that is because we are so focused on hospitality specifically as the category in which we develop. I don't think we will ever move out of that. That is our purpose and the company's purpose. When I say we manage the full scope of the development and design and creative process, what I'm referring to is the underwriting and financial analysis and packaging of a project and a deal, the programming and concepting of what it is the deal is doing, what you are building, as well as then the full go forward scope of creative across design, brand, digital, collateral, and content. So what that looks like in reality is starting with the first step in any development. One of our initial steps that we're usually owning, typically you can also come in to a development later on, or you're brought in as a partner for a specific purpose. Certainly on our principal developments, we are sourcing the project. So finding a piece of land and spinning up a concept off of that, or having a concept in mind and going out and searching for a piece of land. That first or second step is that concept. Typically, a developer is doing this, but only to a certain level before maybe once a project is vetted out and proven out and fundraised for, which we'll get to, they're bringing in an architect or a design firm. At least the developer is understanding what are we doing and inherently why are we doing it, or else there wouldn't be an impetus to go do that project. We, especially in boutique hotels, I would say go deeper even at this very early stage, because unlike apartments and warehouses, there's a lot more subjectivity, choice, and taste and decision making on the direction of a project up front than in those other categories. So we are looking at the market, both from an industry level, what's happening in hospitality, what are our competitors doing, what themes are we seeing, to geographic level as well. What's the aesthetic in the market? Why are people coming there? What does it need? What is it lacking? What are the competitors doing? And then at least some early level of financial analysis so that you can further a simple program and concept, get to at least a base level of what it is you're building, the program of spaces, what the building is going to have and offer its guests, and amenities and things like that get layered on top specifically in hospitality. The next step from there, once things are vetted out, at least at that base level, is deeper analysis, spending more time with data, with deal structure options, with variables around upside and downside cases, finding a return profile and thinking about who your potential investors in your network are, what types of investors you need to go find or partner with someone else to bring in, and then packaging that up in fundraising for the project. This is an area I'd say where we have a core competency. We offer this as a service, specifically just this one step, because we've developed a skill set around communicating broad concepts, sometimes complicated project concepts, very succinctly and effectively, and very story driven, that is effective with driving investors to take action. From there, you're moving into a deeper level of concepting. This is often where maybe a more standard, less design-focused developer would bring in an architect, a design firm, outsource that. We are certainly doing that on our projects. This is similarly going into category and geographic market level research, but then at this step, tying that to aesthetic and brand and design directional decisions that can then be applied in the design phase. We are either managing the design very closely in a creative direction capacity, if not doing the design, both the architecture and interiors ourselves with members of our team. From there, we are certainly on every project doing the brand. I would say this is another core competency of ours next to fundraising. This has just always been a part of what we've been doing from day one. Every concept that I've had myself or come in on, it's been very brand focused. That is the standard scope of a branding process, the visual identity and all elements you're probably familiar with. And then we too have developed a competency around digital in web design and development, in web presence, because of a coordinate business we have, which I'll get to in a second, that's in the web design and development space, as well as then with content, specifically finding success with what we call process content, documenting the journey, transitioning that over time to become a marketing engine to drive revenue for our projects and our clients, as well as organic content. This is something we've sort of just learned out of necessity, being so closely involved with the whole process, the design brand, the process content. It's really only ever made sense that we then are setting the pillars, the foundations, and the strategy for the content, and then creating and managing that content going forward, at least to a certain point once things are established and working well. So that is our development process, which, like I said, is unique, I would say, in both the development space, where a lot of times a developer that's not involved in creative and design is just focused over here, maybe halfway through this process. And even design firms may do brand. That they do content is probably unlikely. A brand firm may do content. That they do design as well is probably unlikely. This is where we come in, managing that full scope, pushing forward, as I like to say, a mile wide and an inch deep at a time. This keeps cohesion across the concepts and projects. Now, thinking about how we get paid, there is fee revenue that a developer is entitled to for this part of the process. So a standard development firm, they basically get paid in the form of development fees and then ownership in the project for everything up front, the impetus, the getting it packaged, the funds raised, and then managing the execution at a high level going forward. There's also fees on the creative side. So typically, like I said, it's either the design fee, the brand fee, maybe the content fee. That's typically packaged into one fee for us. So we participate on both sides. On some of our projects, like I mentioned, we are involved in the ownership as well. The way that works very simply is that in return for doing those first initial steps in packaging the deal and bringing it to market and managing at a high level going forward, the developer is entitled to those fees as well as then promote, which essentially you could think of as a profit share, an outsized piece of ownership after a certain level of performance once investors have been paid back. What's critical for human capital in any development business, but what we're focusing a lot of time on when we strategize and plan for the future, is how we can expand the business and grow it in such a way to capture more of that promote and maybe only give some out in the situations where we want to partner with someone, not because we have to. And the way that looks, I've explained this in another video, but essentially in these key parts of the development process, most developers, especially starting out, need to bring on partners for the capital that's required for vetting the plan and running market studies, engineering and architect studies, and bringing on partners to help raise the capital because they don't have an established enough investor network. And what ends up happening, because those are the two most important parts of a project, without the capital, you may be able to spend your time working on that project, but you ultimately won't get that project truly moving forward. Those partners that are able to take care of those two elements of the pre-development and the development overall end up taking the lion's share of the GP of that promote that I mentioned. So if the promote is X value is $8 million, if you are like Human Capital early on or any developer early on, only playing those roles that don't handle the supply of capital, you are bringing someone else in for that capital, that pre-development capital, you are dropping an ownership in that promote substantially. So you're putting in the same amount of effort, but owning a lot less of the upside. What I have focused on from the beginning is thinking about how can you own as much of this process as possible, especially if you, like we have, develop all the core competencies to carry through the full pre-development process as well as the development process. How can you own as much of that as possible? How can you rely on outside partners as little as possible or as late in the process as possible so that you can maintain the leverage and maintain the ownership in the promote? The challenge is not only for solving that at the individual deal level, but if you are a development company and your goal is to develop multiple deals into the future, concurrently overlapping, you are facing multiple stretches of time on multiple projects where you are deep in the red for sometimes years before you are seeing a return on your efforts, your time, your money invested into any given project. And the way real estate developers have always solved for this is through starting an operating business, a coordinate operating business, typically brokerage, property management, or project management, some sort of fee revenue. I would put my creative services fee under that as well, to fund the business, the team, the principals, the partners, as well as the support team to go develop in the future. The problem is all those business models use labor as their form of leverage. They're labor-based businesses, which means a few key things. They are largely location dependent, which personally is not something I've ever wanted for this company. It doesn't make as much sense with hotels. You want to sort of go out and target specific destinations. And it can be high margin, but it takes a lot of people, which takes a lot of time to manage, which means not only do you not have the capital to put into these two key steps once you find maybe some success with that business, or until you find some success with that business, you don't even have the time to put into these other points of the development, which means you're just not developing properties. You're focusing on managing the operating business that is only meant to really drive forward the development business. So you can start to see the core inherent problem with this development business model. What I want to do, and I'll talk about in my next video, what I've focused on from the beginning of my company is finding an operating business model that is not so labor dependent, that has a higher ratio of income in both time freedom and profit margin and location freedom to input, to labor input, to technology input, to whatever input is going in. And that ratio then leaves that time, that resource, the money to go out and pursue deals to at least fund yourself in those parts of the process your company can handle. If not in time, also building that investor network and building the funds up to secure and pay for pursuit costs of developments yourself. And that is the next phase of human capital. We focused to date largely on the fee business, getting experience, getting track record. The next step is solving for that critical operating and funding challenge. Thanks for watching. More videos like this coming soon.